Welcome to Reflecting Light. This podcast is about filling the world with light by exploring myth, ancient texts, scripture, great works of world literature, and the works of artists, past and present, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And now, here is your host, Mandy Green.
Welcome to Reflecting Light. It's amazing to have you with us today. It is March, my friends. We made it through the long winter, just like Laura Ingalls Wilder. It did come to an end. And to celebrate spring and to celebrate International Women's Day, which is the 8th of March, coming up next week, I've invited a special guest, Amy Robles, who has become my brand strategist. And she's an expert in copyright and content marketing. And Amy and I go way back to the high school days. We were on student council together, and I was the demon llama, and Amy was the girl who played it straight. And lo and behold, we became wonderful, wonderful friends, and everything else is history. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Oh, my word. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Mandy. What a great opportunity.
It's really quite interesting how the people in your life tend to come and go as they're needed. And I'll never forget, I have never once in my life read the obituaries, except for one cold morning, Sunday morning, and I read the obituaries, and Amy's mother had passed away, and we kind of lost connection at that point. And I called my friend Erica, and I said, we need to go find Amy, and I misread the time, so we showed up an hour early. And anyway, I know that Claudia, Amy's mom, was up there saying, you girls need to get back together. And so I've always felt that there's a special purpose beyond our amazing friendship, but a special purpose in helping each other share our gifts, which is what our podcast is about today. So Amy is the person, how many years ago was it? 3 or 4 years ago, she came to my house. We sat in my study, which is like my sacred space. And she said, Mandy, you need to do this professionally. Have you ever thought about making this into a business? Because it ended up being something I was working pretty much full time on. And really, Amy, I have to thank you, because from that has come everything I've done since that point. And I can do content all day. What I can't do is connect it to other people. I could talk, but Amy is the amazing link. I was telling her, I feel like I'm on one side of a glass door that's frosted, and I'm trying to get to the people on the other side of the door, and that there's so many people on the other side of the door that are trying to get to the content that I have. And between us is this frosty glass door where we can't really see and understand what's on the other side of the door. And so Amy is the perfect liaison, because she's that door that's like, let me clean off this glass, and I'm going to connect you with both sides of the door. And that's what she's done so beautifully for me professionally. Is she said, okay, here's what you have. Now my gift is helping you plug it in and connect it with everybody else. So Amy, thank you. What is it about being that connector that you love the most?
Oh, my word. I think it combines all of the different components of my personality in one. Like, I could sit down and listen to you talk about what you love so much. And that is just who I am. And I don't need to, but in the grocery store, the woman in front of me then starts telling me her whole breast cancer situation and where she's at and where she is in treatment. And it's amazing to have that gift, but also then to relate that to the audience, to the people who need you, and people who don't know quite yet that they need you, that are just learning. And the way we connect is through those very pure, genuine emotions. And the world teaches us to put that away. Don't think about your feelings. Don't think about your emotions. Just look like this, be like this, fit in that box. And that is not how the real genuinely how we are as humans and what the Heavenly Father wants for us.
Yes, it's interesting to me that the pandemic did more damage to our connections than anything else, right? Because I think as we become isolated and we fail to make those connections, we feel more fractured. We feel less part of the whole. We don't recognize our gifts. We don't feel the need to share. We have some work to do at undoing that. You had said earlier that your message to women today is to trust heaven. What does this mean to you? How do you trust heaven? What does it look like, sound like?
So trusting heaven is really broad and can be interpreted in so many different ways. And for me, there is a time where you feel the promptings of the Spirit. You feel it, or something, just a real nudge. And Mandy, you felt that just to read the obituaries and to connect with me at a time when I really, really needed friends. Sure, I was home, but I was with my mom and had been her caretaker for several months and felt that kind of isolation. So for you to pop into my life and to reignite that friendship and remember all of those fun things, and then from there to take our friendship into a new direction was incredible. For me, it is about when I feel the Spirit and trusting heaven, sometimes it's you need to do something new. And that's so scary. There's a level of, whoa, that's out of my comfort zone, and that step of bravery. So for me, one of the things surviving through the pandemic, and everyone's experience is very, very different. We lived on base, on a military base during that time, and the military police would come around to make sure people were in their homes and children weren't on the playgrounds around.
Wow.
It was a very different thing. And so for me, it was, I need to learn this new skill. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but today I'm going to take 15 minutes and I'm going to study and explore that. I'm not going to spend all day on it. I'm not going to become obsessed, but I'm going to do 15 minutes. And can you imagine if every woman, every person right now thinking of one new thing they need to learn for the next 30 days, spend 15 minutes, maybe it's on a lunch break at work, maybe it's in your car while you're waiting to pick up your kids, or perhaps it's at the end of the day where you just think, I'm going to just study for what I want to study, what the Lord is guiding me to learn. How much more enriched and fulfilling your life will be, and a skill you could learn, a way that you can progress that no one gave to you. You chose it, you carved out the time, and you followed the Spirit and trusted heaven.
I love that. I think for me, I always look at the big, giant Shel Silverstein whale, and I don't know how to break it down into bite-sized pieces. So I loved how you said 15 minutes for 30 days and see what you can make of it. And really, you can spend 15 minutes mindlessly scrolling, no problemo. So it's really a matter of redirecting it. Now, that call is such an interesting thing. It came to me in the most unexpected way, as I would imagine it happens with all of us. Has that been your experience, that people wake up and say, I feel like I'm supposed to teach Hebrew? I never in 9 million years ever even considered teaching Hebrew. And from that, or I felt I should go to Jerusalem during the summer and learn Hebrew, or whatever it is, that really has been the most profound catalyst for me. Because like you said, when you stay in your comfort zone, you'll continue to do the same activities, be exposed to the same influences, all those kinds of things. How do you follow where your heart leads? How do you follow those feelings? How do you dredge up the courage to say you feel that? And I guarantee our listeners, I'm talking to you, because as I'm speaking, I really feel deep in my heart that many of you are like, oh, she's talking about that thing, and you know what it is inside. And so, Amy, how do you how do you follow that? How do you follow where that heart, that heavenly push is saying, you have gifts and we need you to step up on the stage and share them?
So just this morning, it just hit me as I was thinking about this topic. You know, when a friend or a family member has a brand new baby and they are at the hospital and you're going to go see this brand new baby and everybody's excited and they're kind of bubbly and talking in the elevator going up, and then they get to the floor, and when you open the door, it is quiet. It is so quiet. And there's the magic sparkly feeling all around, and you can feel it. It is tangible, that there is something beautiful and heavenly with this precious, precious baby that's here. That's how Heavenly Father sees us every single day. We are heavenly, and we have been given gifts, and that precious, precious inside your heart, who you are given those ideas for a reason. There's something about that. Maybe it's to learn about yourself. Maybe it's to learn a skill and serve the community. Maybe you work very hard to learn something different, like you decided, Mandy, to learn Hebrew and teach it to a community of people who are just aching to understand and embrace the gospel in an entirely new level and enhance their relationship with Heavenly Father. When you stop and you look at it like this, and do you feel that? The warm fuzzies, the tingles, the sparkling,
Yes.
all of that goodness. That is so real and so tangible that we have got to stop looking at these things, these other just things as, oh, I don't have time for that. There's a reason that's in your heart, and it's okay. In fact, it's very good to trust and follow and do the next right thing for you.
I love that. And that's such a beautiful reframe. Instead of feeling overwhelmed or scared, think of it as a new life, as a new creation, as a new baby. And we really do approach babies with this reverence. This expectation and this blank slate. And what a beautiful way to reframe looking at taking a new plunge or trying something different that you feel called to, and watching it grow and develop. So you have this spark, you have this longing, and how do you complete this work? How do you get the ball rolling? Like for me personally, ideas, great, talk all day, Then it's like, Mandy, here's how you break it down. So 15 minutes for 30 days. How do you start laying that out, Amy? How do you help people see how that actually becomes a reality? As we know, a baby's 100% dependent in the first part of life, and then it slowly takes on a life of its own, which I have found. I never intended to do a podcast or really any of the things I'm doing with my life, but it's actually the perfect job for me. It's what I love. It's what I'm passionate about. And so how did you magically pour your elixir of insight into me and help me go from here's the idea, here's the birth of the idea, to here's an actual structure. Here's how I actually do that.
Okay, so there's two different paths that are going on in my mind. One, I really pushed to squeeze in the time and to finish my master's degree. And that was a big thing. And that was important to me, but it wasn't the right fit. Now, am I regretful of that? No, it's an excellent degree. I'm really glad I have it. At the same time, in this past little while of my life, at night, I would take a few minutes and I would crochet a hot pad. Now, I am not a gifted seamstress. Let's just put the cards on the table. And at first I was just making little hot pads, and I would say, oh, that is not a recognizable shape. A hot pad is not a blob, right? So sometimes you're going to start and you're going to have projects and they're going to be these hideous, ugly little things that are teaching you, which is how we learn in the gospel, how we progress as humans, line upon line, step and precept. Follow one step at a time. And that's the thing. Now I'm comfortable and I have made several gifts of crocheted items that I'm able to use and give to friends. And that is an amazing feeling that you took just these scraps of raw material and made something wondrous from it and are able to give that as a gift. I'm also able to teach, and I've shared with my little girl how to start crocheting and the different steps. And that's something beautiful to share. So perhaps learning and making it, just like you were saying with your Hebrew, it was something that you studied and you loved. And that led you to the next step and the next step of sharing it. And if I understand correctly, Mandy, you shared it only with a couple of people first. And then it slowly grew.
That's right.
Slowly grew. So if you went from step one, wow, I know 15 words in Hebrew from day one, I'm going to make a podcast. Right? And that's what we do as humans. We see just this little drop and where it's going to lead. We just have to follow those steps where it leads us. And that, to me, is the gospel and faith in action. We're not exactly sure how it's all going to come to fruition, but there is something good here, and I'm going to keep progressing with it.
I love that. It really is an exercise of faith. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't really made that connection, but really the best advice my mission president ever gave me was, don't compartmentalize your life. Don't have a spiritual life and a professional life and a family life. That the gospel should just be this beautiful flow that goes through all the aspects of your life. And something in my brain connected when you said that. It is my experience that my profession has been guided and led and built upon step by step. I never know the next thing. Right now, I don't even know what the next thing is, but it really has been a trickle here. People wanting me to teach them Hebrew. It started with 2 students. And then I taught a couple of classes, and then COVID forced me to go online. And now there's a much wider audience. And it's really beautiful how it isn't all at once. I mean, I personally would love one of your blob hot pads because I just love that monument to effort. Right. And I'm always telling my Hebrew students, you're so used to being adept and good at things that when you start something new, we get frustrated that we're not immediately good at it. And I try to encourage them to see the wonder in writing a word for the first time. Don't you remember those feelings as a kindergartner and a first grader when you would, oh my gosh, I wrote that. I know what that says. And we've kind of lost our sense of wonder. And what a great opportunity for us to continue to grow in whatever seems kind of scary enough and daunting enough for us to jump in. How do we discover those gifts? You'd said that your talent is your gift, and it's a heavenly gift. It's a heavenly endowment. What are some ways you found that people have been able to uncover that? How did you discover your talent for copywriting, for this ability to connect a person and their product with other people? How did that come about?
So for me, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. And 2013, I started a blog and a podcast for myself. And it was all about, we were learning different financial strategies and what was working for us in our family. And it exploded, Mandy. It was huge. I had followers around the globe, and these Australians would check in with me and everything. It wasn't the right message. That's not what Heavenly Father wanted me to do. And it became almost overwhelming. And so when you know it's not the right thing, first of all, and you have kind of a self-doubt, I don't know, how is this going to fit? How is this going to work? That I came on my podcast and said, I'm going to take a break and I'll be back. And that was 2018, and I haven't been back.
Wow.
And for the longest time, I felt failure and struggle and how embarrassing, and I let down all of these people. And the more I realized, I think Heavenly Father was giving me opportunity for training to understand. Because while I was doing the regular podcast interviews, and I'd interview these very successful financial investors and leaders in the community, then we'd finish the podcast interview, and then they would ask me all kinds of questions. Amy, I love how you're branding. How did you choose these colors to work for you? You said something here that really resonated. And I've had a couple of people, even my wife mentioned, where did you come up with that? And showing me that I had a skill set that I didn't really understand. And once I started studying that, then I went, oh, well, this is it. This makes sense, right? And how do you have to go through that process and understand? And I felt I failed big, right? My family, cousins across the country were like, oh my gosh, what happened to your podcast? Right? And how do you explain? That's not the right spiritual direction, because most people don't have time to hear that, don't want to have that in-depth conversation. And so learning and understanding that for myself just helped me see, and my daughter remembers still and said, oh, you did the podcast interview, and she remembers different times when I was on the mic and she was little and could not come in the room because we were recording, all of those different things. You have no idea how you're teaching other people in process of doing something. And the world teaches us, sit in your corner, mind your business, scroll your internet, and leave us alone. That's not the way we are supposed to be at this time. That is not why we were here. We got things to do.
I love that you said that, because the events of the last years, and particularly of the last week, have shown us that we are not an island, and that we all need to be shining our light in order to reflect that, give a signal to others, to give them courage, to help them on their journey. Maybe your boat's stalled. Maybe your boat's not out of the harbor. Maybe you're like Amy and your boat got out in the middle of the water and you were like, wait, I think I'm in the wrong place. But you learned a lot of things about boating, didn't you? I really think it's so important that we show up for each other. And I have to say, by you showing up, it's helped me show up. I don't know what it is. I was reading something, and this isn't on our notes, so this is totally improv, but I feel prompted to talk about this with you, Amy. I'm going to get pretty vulnerable now. And you're like, as a listener, what else is new, Mandy? But I do filter quite a bit. I was reading about our mother wound. So certainly historically, we have this patriarchy that has been really hard to women rising up, to understanding their gifts, to we're always crushing our intuition when it's actually one of the finest points about us. And then I was reading about this mother wound, and this really, boy, that hit me like right in the gut, because somehow, as a result of the history and everyone who came before us, I feel like there's this lingering doubt. And this is for men and women. This is for all of us. And if you're a man, I'd love to know your perspective on this and how you feel about this in regards to the women you love and care about in your life. But this deep mother wound that somehow you don't deserve to be successful, or that the world doesn't need you on that stage. We tend to minimize our gifts. We tend to minimize our voice. We feel like we have to fight that much harder. And if we're going from a place of intuition and feeling, like you said so beautifully at the beginning of this podcast, that somehow that's weakness, that somehow that doesn't show up in a patriarchal world. And yet that's really the true strength of this feminine side. And have you noticed this in your own work? How have you fought to overcome it? How do you continue to deal with it? And I'm recognizing that so many women, myself included, kind of carry this, and I don't even think it's conscious, this idea that, do I deserve any of this? And that even just hurts me to say it, but as I've been thinking really, really hard, it does surface. What's your experience been with this?
Well, Mandy, you are inspired because this is something that I have worked on for years. Verbal abuse was something that I had to work through with the home I grew up with. And my father could just cut with words. And so I didn't realize how much of that was a part of my life. And when I first got married, there was something, and I said something about myself, and I just made a joke, and I was like, and my husband stopped me and said, "Stop. That is my wife you're talking about. No one talks about my wife that way." And it stopped me in my tracks.
Wow.
I remember being stunned. And that was the first time I'd ever realized that I was shortchanging myself. And what we do is our self-talk somehow tells us, oh, there are more important things to take care of right now. Or there's someone who needs my help right now. I don't really have time to do this. Or, oh, it's just a little thing I do. No, you see this beautiful body of work that you have created, teaching others the gospel of Jesus Christ through Hebrew translation. And Mandy, you are able to change lives with that one talent that you chose. I'm able to help companies reach an entire audience that they didn't know they had just by being genuine and honest with the feelings that are important to them and how they are reaching out to people who have those same needs and desires. And what it comes down to is even before we have applied for the job, we have reached out to a friend to ask for an opportunity, we have done anything out of our comfort zone, in our own minds, our self-talk has either one, told us we are way too busy and there's too much going on, or two, said, oh, there's more important things. And both of those are teaching us that we are not worthy. And every time you feel that, it is a simple, personal reminder that you are going into the baby's room and you would take time to take care and do what you need for that baby. You can see yourself just as that precious, just that much worth. It's okay and it's good to take care and understand and have the right perspective.
Wow. That's powerful. How did we get to that place where it feels selfish to do something that fills your soul? When I decided to go to Israel for the summer, you cannot believe the backlash I got, particularly from women who I thought would champion me. But it was, oh, how are you doing this? How can you do this to your family? Da, 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 da. And first of all, I get pissed off because I'm like, have you ever said this to my husband who travels all the time or to my brothers who travel? Where do we get this guilt about fulfilling who we are and being our most complete selves? Because I am telling anyone out there that when you feed your soul, when you listen to this call and you go after it, and we're not talking about this crazy, gorgeous end result, but just when you go after it, I'm a much happier woman. I'm a much happier human. I'm a much more fulfilled wife and mother. I think I bring way more to the table in any of my roles in my community or in my family or with myself as a result of nurturing that beautiful divine part of myself that really was latent for so many years. This seed that needs to wake up and be watered and fed. And you wouldn't water a seed for once a week. Well, you could tell I can't keep plants alive in my house. It's like my goal to try and keep something alive. I can only grow children, but I love what you said about that. How do we overcome some of that negative self-talk? What have you found that's helpful? How do you bring yourself back to, this is a worthy, beautiful thing. This is a new creation. Is there anything you found that works really well when we get in these mental ruts and we feel unworthy and we feel that our gifts don't matter?
So I think this is a spiritual question because ideally we see ultimately what we want to be, what we want to have in our life overall. And then we have the day-to-day. And we got to get up, we got to get everyone out the door, we got to get going, and just the day and how there's that disconnect. And the way that has worked for me is every morning I take 5 to 10 minutes, that's all. And I know that's my reading time, and I read something. And usually there is something that rings true. Now, sometimes it's the scriptures, sometimes it's not. I've been reading several books on self-talk. What is self-talk? How is that retraining the way my brain functions so that I'm able to contribute more throughout the day? And then I have some daily mantra. And I know some people love vision boards. Some people love the tangible. For me, it's the words in my head. And so I have around my computer the stickies with the notes, the different things of what I'm thinking of and what my mantra is today. Let me give you one example. One that I use all the time. So I was impatient with my family at one time, and I'm really having a hard time, and I got a lot to do. Write that. Whatever the quality is that day, my whole mantra is, whatever it is, powerhouse. And so I'm saying, I am a patient powerhouse. You see how that changes everything?
Wow.
It changes everything. I am a loving powerhouse. I'm a creative powerhouse. So it doesn't have to be actual actions. It's the way you see things and you process that to help. And that we are all powerhouses in different ways, in different categories, and learning how to use and build on that has really been helpful for me. And it's okay to be independent and want to do your own thing and to take time. And as long as you set healthy boundaries, there's a whole component of that. Look, I only want this much time I'm going to work on, and then I'll be back. And you're right. Just taking that 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, you're able to give so much more to your family instead of half doing it and half being there when your mind is somewhere else. How many parents do we see that are letting their kids play and not engaged at all? Either they're on their phone or they're doing something else and they're just missing it. If they would take that time and say, okay, we're going to have a little quiet time for a few minutes and then we're going to play, then I think it would change the dynamic there.
I love that. I was listening to a mindfulness podcast this morning and thinking of how easily I just jump on autopilot, and I'm so impatient lately. And really, I hate winter so much that I've just kind of given myself this pass to hate winter and to be justified in all of my crappy actions while it's winter. And I just thought, what a mindless autopilot way to be to justify crappy behavior. So I love what you said there about, I am a blank powerhouse. That's going to be my mantra today. I'm a patient powerhouse. And how really we are building eternity each day, and the blocks and the material we take to build it matter. Just pick up one block that's positive and beautiful and put it on the wall. And if it doesn't fit, you can take it out. But I'm so afraid to put a block on the wall that I just sit there and be like, I have this idea for a really beautiful wall. Or not a wall, a bridge. Let's not build walls. Let's build bridges. This amazing bridge. And I appreciate that, the daily. I also appreciate how you're showing up so real. You're being real. In today's Insta world, I think it's so easy to get sidetracked or intimidated by someone's greatest hits, is how someone called it, your greatest hits. And we tend to minimize the value of failure. And I loved how you talked about your failure or how you were successful, but it didn't feel like success. What has failure taught you? What are some ways that we can take that failure and use this beautiful alchemy of failure to grow, to show up real in the world, to make connections? We really don't connect when we're playing at our greatest hits, but when we expose these deep parts of us, these vulnerable parts with us, these wounded, hurt parts with us, then connection seems to really just, boy, those strings and those attachments are much. How has this showed up in your life?
So especially with the Instagram, connecting, social media world, whatever it is, as a marketer out there, they say you're supposed to put something on your stories 10 times a day. You're supposed to make a reel at least once a day. You're supposed to post 3 to 4 times a day, post a carousel. And just thinking of that is exhausting. And all
I'm
that
crying.
is putting, right. It's just putting more and more noise in the world. And if you slow down and you look at it with the right perspective, it's not, as a marketer, how can I make more money? How can I make more money? How can I make more money? For those who have their talent and they want to figure out the right thing, look at it this way. Who can I serve? Who can I help right now? Because every single person listening to this right now, I can see you driving in the car, walking on the treadmill. I don't know what you're doing right now, but I can see that you have an idea in your mind. And that idea and that skill set that you already have can help 3 or 4 people around you. From that one step, you can see, oh, I don't have to do something big right now. I can start small and make an impact and make a name for myself and build a brand and reputation and be able to build from that. And the failure component is when people see that it didn't quite work out. Do you know how much more respect people have for you when they see, wow, that didn't go well. And understanding that you're real, failure is just a part of it. I think we need to eliminate the word failure. If I put up this brick and it's ugly, it's not a failure. It's understanding we got to find the beauty in that brick and figure out how it can fit. And it can be tricky. It can be tricky, but we figure it out and move forward. There is nothing right now on this planet we could not learn. We have the internet. We have very resourceful friends. We have opportunity to look things up and learn right now. Sometimes we just have to ask.
That's perfect. It really is about seeking and knocking and asking. And that really, you've taught me how that goes across the board. Like, again, I think I tend to compartmentalize it into a spiritual frame, but I need to open up to say, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And I do ask that question quite a bit. How can I help? What do you want me to do? This podcast came out of COVID, and I got so tired of the darkness winning. And all I have are my words, and that's all I have to give. But that's the way I could figure out to fight back. And I know that there's so many gifts out there, and we all have different gifts. One of my favorite lines is, we may not have it all together, but together we have it all. And I'm a firm believer that we each have these amazing gifts. And when we play to each other's strengths, we're covered. We're good. We don't need to be professionals at everything. We just need to be good at what it is that calls to us, that resonates with our spirit and who we really are. And then be willing and vulnerable enough to make that shot. I mean, my first couple of podcasts, editing is not easy. And the sound quality is terrible, and I'm still working on it, but you really have to start somewhere. And I love your insight and your wisdom there. Tell us a little bit about what you do professionally, how you help people plug in. If someone wanted your help, how they would get a hold of you, before I give you my last question of the interview.
So let's just take a brand everybody knows, just any brand. Okay, so Jeep. Everybody knows Jeep. What does Jeep sell? What is their motivation? What are they selling? Have you ever thought about that?
No, I just want
there
to
are a lot of companies. Oh, you do want to white one? I know. That's one of the reasons I brought it up.
Okay.
Well, right. Anybody can have a car. There are lots of different cars on the market. What is it about Jeep that sells something so different? When you stop and you look at it, and you look at their commercials, and you look at it overall, Jeep is selling freedom, adventure, getting out there, discovery, and understanding what that brand is and what they sell and the people that they reach out to, their audience. That's what they search for. Let's look at Dove, the soap brand. And their entire marketing, their branding is completely different. And they're reaching for someone who is looking for simplicity, honesty, and genuineness in this very polished, airbrushed Photoshop world. And so by taking it and breaking it down and finding out what the brand is, what the emotion that they're selling, and how they connect with the audience, that is taking all of my abilities and talents together and putting it into one and helping others see the value in what a brand offers. So that's what I do as a brand strategist. As a copywriter and content writer, then I'm creating, so you have this person who really wants to understand more about this brand, or this is the brand and they want to sell more, then what is that person looking for? What is going on in their life? And so connecting by emotions. And Mandy, can I tell you, growing up, people are like, Amy, you're a little too touchy-feely. Amy, you're a little into your, that sounded awful. You're a little bit like, it's all way too deep. It's all about emotions with you. But that's really true. That's how my mind works. And that's how I process the world to connect with others. And it actually is a fantastic gift to work with brands and companies and reach the audiences, because that's how we connect emotion to emotion. So if somebody wanted to work with me, they would either find me on Instagram right now, and my website is in development. It'll be done shortly. I'm at Amy Robles Writes on Instagram, or you can find me at amyrobles.com.
Fantastic. I think you're selling yourself a little short, because I think you are so good at connections and processing those, but you have this very smart brain. You're so adept at taking knowledge and breaking it down and plugging it in and giving it a structure. And I mean, you really have this beautiful balance of right and left brain that's been really helpful to me. I think you have so much of both sides of that hemisphere developed, so that you're able to connect on an emotional level. I mean, I'm talking to one of the nation's military wives of the year. I forgot to say that in your accolades, Amy, but this is someone who really has connected. She was what's called an ombudsman in the Navy, which is like the Relief Society president of hundreds of women while their husbands are deployed. And the stories, Amy, it makes me just, I'm tired just thinking about it. So you really have an amazing gift of connecting. But like I said, you've been able to develop the expertise that goes with how does this connection show up and how do we plug it in for other people? So you really have some amazing gifts. And I'm really grateful you would come on and talk with us about how those gifts show up, some ways that you can go forward, some ways you can figure it out, develop it. These are really important conversations for all of us to have. My last podcast was about Zion and how the Lord called his people Zion. And it was a title bestowed by the Lord, not by the people, but that they had become so tuned into each other. And it says one heart and one mind, no poor among them. I think the one heart and one mind is that we're so in love with each other. We're so in love with our purposes here. And we all want to serve heaven. We all want to lift, to encourage, to fight back against the darkness, all of these things. And perhaps I'm just thinking about our conversation. No poor among them means that no one's playing small. No one's sitting on the sidelines. This isn't a junior high dance where there's the few lucky couples out on the floor, but that no poor means everyone has gifts and they're being developed and shared and shine out. And it's like, that would sound amazing to me. It does sound amazing to me. If everybody's out there just like ripping it up spiritually, professionally, ecumenically, to quote Jack Sparrow, whatever it is, perhaps Zion comes when we all are playing big. And we're all really sharing those divine gifts. So thank you. My last question, always on this podcast, is what does it mean to you to reflect light?
Reflect light. Truly, genuinely, unabashedly, you let your light shine in the way that only you can let it.
Awesome. Makes me think of the Savior's words, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, parenthetically, and your mother who are in heaven. It really is. We are the source of the light. We just try and reflect that divine light into the lives of others. Amy, you do this beautifully. You have a huge heart. And I love that you've plugged it in this professional way that really amplifies the reflection of other people. I mean, what a gift. What a gift to plug people into this grid and help them shine and reflect. I know you've been instrumental in helping me conceptualize this and make a brand. She was the first one that told me, you are your brand, Mandy. You are your own brand. And that was news to me. And I've had to work on that. Any final words for our listeners?
I'm delighted to be here. And each one of you has something to offer. And more than anything, you need to know you have a genuine friend in me. And I hope that you know you have work to do.
Awesome. I love it. My dear friends, that is the podcast for today. May you be encouraged. May you feel that light, whether it's huge and shining or just like this little dim light inside of you. May you feed that and help it grow and ask and seek and knock about what ways you can develop that light and how you can use it to create heaven on earth. Amy, thank you for being here with us. That is the podcast for today. Amy and I are sending you tons of love and light.
Thank you for joining us for Reflecting Light with Mandy Green. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a good rating and share it with your friends. And remember, your light makes the world a brighter place. Share it.